Hello and welcome to our final Coach Track 501, where we're talking about reproducing. And what that means is to multiply self and others. And this is really, we are ending on this one on purpose because it is foundationally one of the most important things that you do as a coach. This is something that whenever there's an area this isn't happening, it's likely that the coaches aren't active in their role or not equipped in a proper way to do this, because you will see fruit of effectiveness in this as coaches are raised up and coaches are activated in areas of ministry. So I want to highlight a couple things of why it's important. Number one is reproducing is important because everything that's healthy reproduces. Even those who physically can't reproduce, they're not able to have kids, they reproduce themselves in different ways. Either they reproduce themselves by investing in other people or in the work that they do. We reproduce. Healthy things, healthy organizations, healthy people reproduce. We reproduce ourselves. If you have kids, you reproduce yourself. If you raise up other people, if you invest in things, you reproduce yourself in the work that you do. And so everything that's healthy reproduces. Churches, healthy churches reproduce, meaning that they grow or they expand or start new things or whatever. Healthy things reproduce. That's why it's important. Another thing is that part of leadership is stewardship. Part of leadership is stewardship. This is true if you are a parent or you have a family. You have to steward what you've been given. Even if you're single, you have a home, you have a job, you have to steward what you've been given. And so leadership is stewardship. We have to steward, we have to care for and manage what we've been given well in a God-honoring way. And one of the ways that you do that is through reproducing. So Ephesians 4:11 and 12 and 16 says, "And he gave the apostles, the prophets, and the evangelists, the shepherds, the teachers, to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for the building up of the body of Christ, from whom the whole body joined and held together by every joint which is equipped, which each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love." So leaders, part of our job as leaders is to equip the saints to do ministry. And as we do that, it grows the body of Christ. It helps us to be healthier. So we are equipping you, and you will be equipping others. So healthy things reproduce. Proverbs 22:6, "Train up a child in the way that he should go. When he is old, he will not depart from it." Jesus invested in his disciples. Think about this. Jesus spent time with his disciples. His disciples eventually would lead in the early church, and many people were blessed and came to know the Lord through their ministry. And then those people raised up other people. And we are descendants of that family line, is that we are reproducing. And we hopefully are reproducing in the lives of people in our churches or our families. We are reproducing. Matthew 28:19 and 20 says, "Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age." So even here, it's talked about going and making disciples. We are called by nature is to multiply ourselves. And so leadership development is a part of discipleship if done from a Christian perspective. Also, even just the very process of sanctification, Jesus is making us, the Holy Spirit is developing us to become more like Christ. So we, the likeness of Christ, is being multiplied in us as we are sanctified. So it's important. So there's a lot of evidence, even in Scripture, of reproducing. It's something that healthy things do, healthy organizations do, healthy people do. We reproduce. Even if you're unhealthy, you're probably going to reproduce yourself. If you're selfish, you're probably going to reproduce selfishness in your life. If you're unforgiving, it's probably going to produce more offense and unforgiveness in your life. So things produce, but as Christians, we are called to reproduce in a healthy, godly way. So the next section we're talking about is the who. How do you identify who to develop? And so before we do that, I want to explain to you a reminder of various people in your area of ministry. So one level is member. These are people that are in your small groups. These are people who are serving on a team. They're not necessarily leading anything. They're just a part of a team or a part of a group. And so one of the things that hopefully through discipleship and through serving together or in a small group together, that you're helping them to learn to manage themselves. And this is a really big thing that if you're looking to see if someone can lead, what are you looking for? The number one thing is, are they able to manage themselves? What I mean by that is if someone can't show up on time, if someone's not consistent, they likely cannot lead. So that's almost like a deal breaker. So if they can't show up on time, if they're not consistent, if they're not dependable, you automatically, it's like that, you probably can't raise them up yet to be a leader. So that's something that you're looking for. And then for a leader level, when you're looking who to raise up to lead, you're looking at these competencies. These are the competencies that you need to look for in order for a leader to be successful. The prime competency, the number one thing is that they need to be a good communicator. And by saying that, I don't necessarily mean that they have to be a great public speaker, but they have to be able to effectively communicate internally and externally, meaning communicate to team members about announcements, being able to explain to them, how to do their role or something along those lines. They need to be able to communicate. Another one is recruit. That is ability to gather new people to your team or to your small group. Now, and that can look differently. Some people are going to be natural gatherers. They're extroverted or whatever. They're very relational. Other people, it may not come as naturally, but they can develop that skill, and they do it in a different way. It may even be that they realize that they're not that person, but they can identify people who do have those giftings, and so they recruit through those people who have those giftings. So if you're an introvert or whatever, that is one strategy. You can do that. But as a leader, you want to be able to recruit people to your team or to your group. Admin, they have to be able to have the diligence in following the team management system with excellence. And of course, that's going to look differently if it's a greeting team versus if it's a small group. But you have to be able to do basic things. And again, this isn't not on an organizational level. It's basically you have the ability to, if you're doing a small group, to be able to administratively carry out a discussion. If you are leading a greeting team, you have to be able to look at the checklist, do we have the flags up? Another thing that we look for in leaders is an eye for excellence. Do they have an eye for excellence? Meaning, do they do what they do well? Do they do it before they're asked? Do they go the extra mile? Do they show up early? These kinds of things indicate some level of passion or gifting for excellence. And then lastly, in the leader is problem solving. If you're a leader, you have to understand that there is a solution to every problem, and we have to be intentional in solving the problem. So a leader isn't saying, hey, here's a problem, here's a problem, here's a problem, you fix it. No. Leaders have to help not only identify problems, they also have to be able to investigate potential solutions to problems. And it may be that the person on your team who's always seeing the problem. They may have that leadership gifting. You just have to sit there and go, okay, that's great. What are some potential solutions to that? So again, if you're a coach, you need to know what the competencies are for a leader. The prime one, the one that has to be there, has to be a good communicator. We can equip on these other ones, but there has to be some level of potential, I think they can get there. This may not, because again, not everyone's going to be a 10 out of 10 on all of those competencies, but you'll be able to coach up in some of them. So you have to use discernment when you're doing that. All right, as a coach, here's our 5 competencies we've been covering is mentorship, the ability to grow people through the right experiences. Inspire, have a heart to encourage, unite, and motivate. Delegation, able to know what only you can do and what others can do. So you can empower them to be able to do those things. Equipping, that is effectively coach and equip. And then what we're talking about today is reproduce, multiplying ourselves and others. Part of what we mean by that is you are doing things, and part of what you're called to do is reproduce yourself so that there are other coaches that can help other leaders, but you're also called to multiply leaders themselves so that as the area of ministry grows, you're continually identifying future leaders and continually developing them. All right, so now we've talked about the why, we've talked about the who, kind of what are you looking for in those competencies. Now we're going to talk about a little bit about the how. How do we begin to do this? There's 2 big areas to this. One is developing yourself, and 2 is developing others. And by talking about developing ourselves, if we're not growing, we can't help other people grow. So you produce what you are, not what you want. And so it's really important that you understand that all of us, none of us are perfect, so we have to continually be self-developing. Like as a leader, I'm always learning. I'm always reading and growing and talking to other pastors and listening to podcasts and obviously in the Word of God and praying like, Lord, what is the next step here? What about this? This isn't working. I've got a lot of degrees, and what I see some people is when they get a lot of degrees, they begin to think that they know everything, which I didn't have that experience. When I learned and I got multiple masters and my doctorate and so on and so forth, I began to realize there's so much more I don't know. And so what my degrees did actually was help cultivate a life learning mentality. And so like I've learned more since my degrees than I ever learned in my degrees, but I'm grateful for them because they helped me kind of develop that. You don't have to go that path that I went in and get all these degrees. The point is, though, is that we are to always be lifelong learners, because the moment you stop growing is the moment you stop being able to help other people grow, because you get stagnant. So there's 5 traits to an effective spiritual leader, and this is something, again, how you develop yourself. Number 1 is this: constantly growing. As I've mentioned, constantly growing. Teachability, not thinking you've arrived and know everything. Time with the Lord, obviously. Like, again, we talk about John 15:5. It's become like my life verse that Jesus says, I'm the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me will bear much fruit, but apart from me, you can do nothing. If we don't take time with the Lord, we can't do anything. Like, we won't do anything of any significance. We'll just do a bunch of busy work. So we have to take time with the Lord. How is that working in your life? Meaning, like, what does your devotional life look like? Are you taking the time in the mornings or in the evening to pray and get in the Word of God? Because if you're not, it's going to show up in your areas of ministry and the other parts of your life as well. Constantly growing. Teachability, time with the Lord, equipping self. Like, what is your equipping strategy? So I have a multi-layered strategy for myself, of course. I've got my personal devotion time in the mornings where I'm in the Word and I'm praying and I'm journaling. I do those things almost every day where I'm in the Word and I'm praying and I'm journaling. But then I also have another layer of equipping where I'm reading. So my goal is to read at least 1 book every week. And I do that because I actually would like to set it even higher, but then other things would suffer. But as long as I hit 1 book a week, it allows me to be intentional, but it also gives me flexibility. And almost always I exceed that number. And then there are certain podcasts or people in my life that I can go to for situational things that I'm always equipping. There's also yearly equipping of conferences that we go to for different reasons. Sometimes it's pastoral development. Sometimes it's my wife and I go to a marriage retreat or something. It's equipping in that way. So you have to have a strategy. If you don't have a strategy, put it this way. It doesn't matter if you have a plan or not. You have a strategy. It just means that your strategy may not be working. Because your strategy may just be like, well, I'm just gonna wait until it comes to me. I'm gonna wait for the moment, and then I'm gonna feel it. Well, guess what? Sometimes the marriage help you need doesn't come when you actually need it. It often comes before it when you think everything's hunky-dory. So if you don't have a rhythm in place, you're setting yourself up for failure. So it's important that you have some level of rhythm in there. If you struggle, like you don't know how to figure that out, maybe you talk to your director, or we've actually developed a time management workshop that might actually help you be able to outline this because I guarantee you, your leaders are gonna need help with this. So you need to invest some time in this yourself so you can offer them something. Constantly growing. Again, part of that is choosing joy. Choosing joy in all situations. That is not just something that comes naturally to most people. It's something that we have to cultivate. Also pursuing excellence. As a coach, your job is not just to take on offenses of leaders. Your job is to help them learn to grow, because as they are leading people and working things out, they're actually growing spiritually if they're doing it in God-honoring way, because they're being put in situations they have to grow in order to do them well. And so you're going to have to teach them to choose joy and to pursue excellence. Well, in order to do that, we have to do that ourselves. All right? Another aspect to spiritual leadership is inviting people in, meaning hospitality. All right? In fact, it's actually one of the prerequisites for eldership is hospitality, that we're actually able to invite people into our homes or take them out to dinner or whatever, that we're actually connecting relationally. It is always a red flag if someone will not connect relationally with other people. So I've had people in the past who wanted to be a pastor, wanted some level of leadership. They would not plug into a small group. They wouldn't open up about stuff. And I'm not saying they have to tell you every horrible, deep, dark secret, but there's an issue. There's something going on if they're not willing to share some of their life. All right? And so that's a really big thing to be looking out for ourselves as well. What is blocking us from this ability to hospitality? Next one is praying for those they lead. I did a little short equipping. In fact, if you want to talk to your facilitators, I did an equipping about one way that you can actually start activating this right away. It's talking about how you can begin to pray the armor of God for yourself, for your family and friends, and for those that you lead. So I'd encourage you, it's a short video, but it gives you a starting point of how to actually pray for your teams consistently. And I promise you, if you do this, it will change the dynamics of your team. And so I want to provide a link and that video and maybe some examples of those prayer guides for them. Another aspect of effective spiritual leadership is challenging those they lead. It is not good leadership to never change things or to never challenge things. There may be things in the lives of your leaders that need to be confronted, whether it be in their marriage, whether it be how they're allotting their time or their finances, how they're approaching their dating life if they're single, the decisions they're making, the things that they're watching, how they're carrying out their roles and responsibilities. You know, this is where we come to teachability. If someone is not open to being corrected, then you already have a problem. And so a good leader will challenge and help them grow. And the next one is a good listener. All right? Typically, especially these last two, you're going to be good at one or the other. People who are good listeners often don't like to challenge. People who like to challenge are not necessarily the best listeners. So most likely one of those you're going to be already better at than the other, and you may have to cultivate the other. But again, part of you being a good leader and developing others is that we have to continually develop ourselves. I'd encourage you guys, you need at least 1 or 2 hours a week just to develop yourself, meaning that you're growing in skills and spiritual maturity as well. And then, of course, we talk about developing others, which is one of the most important things that coaches do. This is we've seen where this was missing. It really limited what we could do in ministry. And you cannot reproduce without developing, right? You can't just here's a task, do it, and expect them to be the same that you were. You have to develop them, both spiritually and through practical skills. You can't reproduce without developing, and this is something I take seriously both as a pastor and also as a father. I try to take times with all of my kids, not just to hang out, which is important, but also to develop them. And so one of the things that we started to do is that my oldest daughter really likes to do athletic stuff, and she came to me that really bummed out because she's always been able to keep up with the boys with all the physical stuff. I guess they have like a presidential competition or whatever. And every year, she's the only girl that's been able to keep up with the boys. But this year, it changed because now she has to do pull-ups, and she can't do them. And so she was really bummed out about it. So I'm like, well, you know what? Daddy works out in the morning, and so we can try to work on that to see if we can improve. But I told her, I said, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. So are you willing to put in the work to make this happen? And she said, sure. So we started to wake up and work out together. And I wanted to share with you some little tidbits that I've learned while developing her and sharing with her like different workouts, kind of like what ended up happening as time went on. And so I just want to give you some tidbits that's happened because you're not going to be able to reproduce if you don't develop. And guess what? Part of developing is spending time with them. All right? So we have these equipping things, like we have growth track, and we have lead track, and we have coach track, but you're going to have spend time together. So like, for instance, for me, I help equip these tracks, but also I have to actually spend time with the staff and have conversations like, we need to process this and we need to process that. Sometimes it's like, let's stop, let's review this. Sometimes it's like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? How are things going? It takes time. We'll do retreats. One of the reasons that we do retreats is that we can connect relationally. Why? Is because you can't really develop if you don't develop relationships. So that's important. So I want to highlight to you a couple things that I begin to observe as I've developed my daughter. So one of the things I notice when I begin to work out with my daughter is that I start off with more endurance than she does. So I'm not, obviously I'm an adult and she's not, but just by nature, watching it, I didn't realize how limited her endurance was. And so you got to keep that in mind, is your capacity for things may not be the same as theirs. Now you may get a situation where you run into a high capacity person and it may not be this way, but understand that you're already probably starting off higher than most people that are going to develop. So you got to keep that in mind. Also, you have to have wisdom as if they're ready for this or not. And we have some tools to help you with that, because my other kids want to work out with me, and I'll do that at times, but I know that they're not to the degree where they can be consistent and carry it out. Like my son, my oldest son, is wired a little bit similarly to my daughter, and he actually likes to run. If we just ran one lap, he could probably beat us all. He is like this tall to my knee at this point, and he's fast. He doesn't have the endurance, though, and he doesn't have the commitment yet, because he will start to work out and then quit 10 minutes in. So I had to recognize he's not quite ready. Hopefully in time he will be, because it's something that he wants to do. One of the ways that you can see if they're ready or not is by seeing how they do with smaller tasks and smaller commitments. So like, I will still work out with my son, I just won't do it every day. I'll do it once a week, I'll do it every couple weeks, depending on the weather, so we can run, because I don't want that to die. I want him to keep, having that desire so that he can actually get there at one point. What I realized with working out with my daughter is that in the beginning I had to slow down my workout. So in the beginning it took longer, but now actually we're sometime in, and I don't really have to slow down for her. Now, we don't do things equally, but what I'm doing and what she's doing can coexist, because now her endurance can keep up. And so that's important to understand, is that on the front end, it will take more time, but in the long end, there's more endurance and it's more productive. Here's one of the issues. People don't like to take the time to develop because they think of all the things they have to do. Well, guess what? If you're always focused on task, you will always be struggling. Always. Always. Because you're always looking at the trees in your face. You have to do the more important things, or else it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You never get out of it. We don't have enough leaders. We don't have enough volunteers. Well, because you didn't take the time to develop them. So it's important to understand that on the front end, you have to prioritize it and figure out how to pull that off. Another thing that I found out is that I had to adjust my schedule to fit with my daughter, because I used to wake up earlier and work out earlier and then do my devotional. So I would wake up around 4:30 in the morning and do the workout and then my devotions. But the way our schedule works as a family is our family will eat breakfast together at 6:30 in the morning, because then they have to get ready and they're out the door, and they have to be out the door by like 7:15. And so just the way our family is, it's just what works, because we want to try to do breakfast together. And so, but at the same time, my daughter wasn't going to wake up at 4:30 in the morning. So I actually adjusted it and switched it to where now we work out at 5:30 in the morning so that she could join me. So I had to adjust. So it may be in developing that you may have to adjust some of the things that you do in order to find time to invest in that person or to invest in those people. It may be like, that's one of the reasons why we're creating these tracks, is that you may need to be a part of, as a coach, be a part of these tracks going forward, because then you can better help people get developed. I guarantee you this: the team that has the most coaches participating in their lead track and coach tracks will be the healthiest ministries in the church. I guarantee it. I guarantee it, because the coaches will see the people coming in. They'll help translate it and get them plugged in. That area will be the most successful areas of the church, as the healthiest areas of the church. So initially developing will impact your output on the front end. And that's why you have to actually plan ahead. You have to think about this, because it will impact some of the other things that you do. Another thing I figured out with my daughter is I have to figure out to keep reminding her the why. And from a coaching perspective, this matters is because you need to share the big why. This impacts the church, ministry, advancing the kingdom of God, seeing people come to know the Lord, but also their personal why. So sometimes when my daughter would get frustrated or feel tired or feel defeated, I just would remind her, say, remember, you want to be able to get those pull-ups, and it may take a while. It may take a while, but if you work hard, you will eventually be able to do pull-ups. But you're going to have to put in the effort. And remember, and I would remind her, she's like, all right. And she would just like, let's do it. So you have to keep reminding them the big why, organizationally and ministry-wise, this is why we do this. And also personally, understand, when you lead a small group or when you lead a team, you're impacting people's lives. And not only that, you're developing yourself. I've seen so much growth in you. You're a better communicator. You're a better delegator. You deal with conflict better. You're growing. So you have to remind them of their why. One of the things I realized with working out with my daughter is that as we would work it out, I could show her the form. Like, there's certain ways to do exercises that don't help. So we have a small group that we do a dad bod where we all work out, and several of the staff on the church work out together. And there's an exercise called a plank, where you actually are like on your toes, almost like a push-up, but on your forearms. And one of the newer folks to the group were like, these are easy. This isn't that bad. And one of the other guys been going for a couple weeks go, yeah, put your butt down. And he's like, oh, this is harder. Well, the issue was the form was off. The form wasn't working. And so when you begin to develop, some things you'll be able to do well, other things you'll be able to notice and say, all right, this isn't quite how you do it. If you just throw somebody into it, it's likely that it's not going to get done correctly. But over a period of time, you can show in correct form, and then they'll get stronger. And not only that, they'll begin to help other people develop and grow. But you know what's interesting? As time has gone on with my daughter, I have to correct form less. She's getting the form. If we do a new exercise, I'll still have to, show her. But what's happened now is there's room in our workout or our run, sometimes we run, where we can just talk about life. So we're just running one time, and she just starts, sometimes she'll ask me about boys. Sometimes she'll ask me about the Bible. Sometimes she'll ask me about being a mommy or a daddy. She asks me all sorts. Sometimes it's about toys or something that's completely irrelevant, but it's a fun conversation. What's happening is because I'm spending time in developing her, and we've worked out the skills, now we have actually time to talk about life and spiritual questions that they have. If you develop people, that's going to happen. You want to develop skills, but you're also going to develop and help invest in their life as well. You need both. You need both. So it's an important thing that my daughter actually appreciates when I give feedback because she wants to do it well. Especially, sometimes I'll have her do exercises that don't make sense to her goal of doing pull-ups because she doesn't understand why it relates. And so when I explain to her, this is why it's important, and give her feedback, she's like, oh, I get it. One of the things I like to do is there's a life lesson, whether it's endurance, whether she tripped and fell, or whatever we're doing. Sometimes I can use it as a teaching moment and sit there and say, this happens in life too. Actually, working out together is actually a good learning lesson because it can teach you other things. So I think it was this morning, she starts talking about shoes, that there was one type of shoe that she heard was the best type of shoe, that you had to have that shoe. And I just said, you have to understand, every shoe company's job is to make you think that their shoes are the best. And so that's their job. It's true electronically, it's true with your car, it's true because they want you to spend your money on them. So what you can't do is just buy into that. Now, you might find that you like one better than another, but also not only do they want you to believe that their shoe is better, they want you to believe the next one is better than the previous one. And what that does is it gets you into you keep spending money and keep spending money. And I related that to the money that she's working and that she's been saving. I'm like, what if you bought those shoes every single time? She's like, I wouldn't have any money left. That's right. So you can't just let them get into your mind to think that you always have to buy. She's like, oh, okay. So there's moments of just even budgeting with a 9-year-old girl. She doesn't even process those things, but those opportunities came up just through development. I guarantee you, when you get into coaching, there's going to be conversations you never expected that you're going to be able to equip on. One aspect that's important is that there are certain things I'm not good at. And so what I've identified is that there's areas of my daughter's, even workouts routine that I have to get somebody else to help with. And so you have to have wisdom to know, is this, I can't really help you with this, but perhaps so-and-so can. So you have to have the humility and the awareness to know what you're good at versus what other people are good at. As time has gone on, I do less teaching, and it's more pinpointed equipping. Now she's getting it, and now she's beginning to teach others. When the kids come out and the other kids come out and help us and play and work out occasionally, she's the one showing them how to do it. So if you take the time to develop other people, this will exponentially help the rest of the church and other people, because when you teach them and train them and equip them, they often begin to show other people the same way. It's like, oh, you don't hold the bucket that way. You do it this way, and here's why. When you have this kind of difficult situation in a small group, this is what I learned. And it's information and spiritual truths are exponentially shared. I just want to give you a practical tip. I figured out with coaching my daughter in this way is what we call batching. Batching is when you take a lot of similar things and you put it in a category or and you do them a lot in the same place. For example, if I'm going to write a bunch of letters, I'll do them all at one time. Or I'll often schedule a lot of my meetings back to back to back because it's more consistent. There's less time wasted. Even when we do content or we record content, sometimes I'll just record back to back to back because it saves time. The same thing is true when you do coaching. For example, say you're a coach and you're going to go visit one of your small groups. Well, you're going physically to visit them. So one way that you could batch is if you have 4 other leaders that you're coaching, maybe after the small group or right before the small group, you text your other leaders and you encourage them. That's one way to batch, that you're encouraging them at the same time individually, do one text and the next text. Or another way to batch is that, let's just say you're doing small groups and you can go to all of your in-person visits to their small group all in one week. It's one way that you can batch. You batch that week. So it saves time. For those of you that struggle with not having enough time, think about ways that you can batch what you do. Understand, even if you're helping someone in an area that doesn't seem spiritual at all, when they begin to grow there, it actually impacts other areas of their life because it helps them to understand responsibility as a leader, maybe help them understand stewardship, help them understand some of these little tips. We've had so many people who go through our leadership equipping sessions or coach tracks or whatever and go, wow, this doesn't just help me in ministry, this helps me in life. So when you're investing, it may seem completely irrelevant, but it really can help because a lot of these skills are transferable into our spiritual lives, into our family lives, and our work lives. Understand, when you take the time to invest in people and show them and share with them and teach them, it builds capital when you can then have to correct them. So relational capital goes a long way when you do have to correct them, when there's something they've gone sideways on. So it's important that you are building that capital because it's probably going to happen. You're going to have to bring some level of correction, meaning that they keep doing the wrong thing or maybe they're making bad decisions in life. And so it's important that this investment is something that you're investing in them because then there's more credibility when you go and have to correct them. The last thing I'm going to say about this coaching thing with my daughter is that as we've spent time, she's now hungry for more. Because this morning, she did 4 pull-ups. And now she's hungry for more. I thought she'd just want to stop. She's like, no, let's keep going. And so that's what happens when you begin to equip people. Once they start to get it, they start to get hungry for more. And my hope is maybe some of you are here in this coaching track for that thing. Maybe lead track got your juices flowing, or maybe light meetings you got equipped, and it's like, hey, I really like to keep growing and developing. Awesome. So now we want to transition to talk about how do you spot potential. Developing people and reproducing is you have to be able to identify a few things. Number one is what is their potential? What are you seeing? And also, what is their performance? Like, you don't want to raise somebody else up if they're already not performing well at the role that they're currently in. This goes back to, in a member, if someone is not faithful, if they're not dependable, if they show up late all the time, if you never know if they're going to call out or not, then it's likely that you're not going to be able to depend on them on a higher level. So you got to look for these things. And so we could develop a tool that is a potential and performance worksheet, and it will help you process some of these things. So, as you can see on the graphic here, but you have a place where you can say their name, and you can highlight potential, performance, and then next steps. So what that looks like here is that you can see that there's a key here. So when you're looking for potential, here's a key. If you have their name, and you put next to their name a symbol on where you see their best potential. Like number one is an arrow up, that you think that their potential can be raised up, meaning that you think they have a leadership ability higher than what they're currently operating in. So you can process where to raise up, or that they have potential to raise up. And then there's a cross, meaning, and this is rare, but we put it here just in case. Say, I think this person has potential to be a full-time vocational minister on staff at a church somewhere, and you put a cross next to their name. Again, that's going to be rare. Then you have a box. You just draw a square, and it says, I think that this is growth potential, meaning that I think that what they're doing well, but I think on the level that they're at, they have potential to keep growing and get better at the level that they're at. Then you have what you call a pillar potential, meaning this is their lane, but I think they can do what they're doing better. And this is where they're asterisks, so they're pillars. These are the people who stay on a team for a long period of time, and they become the foundation of that team, whatever it is. There's some people that's like, wow, they are the best greeter ever. And they're pillars to that area because then they can remember everything that you've done. We made this change, but that's where they thrive. That's their lane. And then lastly, it's a sideways arrow, which is a transfer arrow, which means basically that you think that this person's best potential may be in a different team. Like, for example, say, wow, I just realized that they're a tremendous singer. I actually think that they need to consider being on the worship team. Or I didn't realize they had such a love for kids. I think maybe we need to talk about maybe them transferring to this other team. So this is identifying potential. Is there potential to just really excel with the current things that they're doing? Is the potential the same level but more responsibility at that same level? Or is it to be raised up to go to that next level? Like they're doing a great job, member, but I think they could be a leader or a coach. Then you write the upward arrow. So that's how you identify potential. So what you do is you write everybody on your team, everybody you're responsible for, and you assign one of these things. And if you don't know, you put your best guess and you just observe that person. And hopefully over a period of time, you'll be able to identify where you think their most potential is. Next is their performance, meaning like how are they doing at the role that they're doing? And what you can do is write down EE means that they exceed expectations. They exceed them. They go above and beyond. The other one is they meet expectations. They're not exceeding them, but they consistently meet the expectations. So ND means needs development, all right? So this means that they're not performing where they need to be performing, needs development. ND does not stand for Notre Dame. It stands for needs development, although in most seasons it pretty much means the same thing. Notre Dame needs development. They're normally not very good. And even if they are good, boo, sorry. If you're not a football fan, then you don't know what that means, but ND means needs development. So we gave you another matrix when you're trying to figure out as far as performance, as far as exceeds expectations or meets expectations or needs development. We gave you this little guide here that can help you clarify the differences between those three things that you can look at. The important part of this is you need to identify the potential, and over time, you may come to realize that you were wrong initially. Over time, it may be revealed that the potential is higher or the potential is different. Or you may find that the potential may not be as high, or it may be not what you thought it was because of whatever reason. It could be capacity, could be character, could be competencies in those areas. They don't have that particular gifting. But performance, you need to take the time to evaluate your team consistently. How are they doing? Because if you take someone you really like, but they're consistently not meeting expectations, then you're always going to be struggling. So that's why you have next steps. What is their next steps? Well, if they're on the member level and they're exceeding expectations and you see that they have this raise up potential, then maybe their next step is to fill out a leadership application so they can go to the lead track. Or maybe you see a ton of potential in this person, but they don't have a strong theological foundation. So you send them through the foundation small groups, or maybe they have just some junk and some hurt. Maybe you send them to freedom. So the whole point of this is to identify how you can identify potential, how you can evaluate performance to see if this is a right fit, and then also what the next steps are. Because if you sit there and say, I think this person's potential, I think they could be a coach. I think they'd be awesome at it. But their performance, they never show up. They're not dependable. Regardless of the potential, they're not showing that they're ready to take that step yet. There's some maturing that needs to happen before they take that step. The next question you need to ask yourself is, in order for them to take that next step, if you do identify that they're to be raised up, or maybe you think that there's growth potential on the same level that they're at, but just more responsibility on that same level, you need to be able to identify, do they meet the requirements of that role for that step up, or are they doing what they're supposed to be doing well? So this is where you have to evaluate. When you're evaluating this, we gave you this sheet, but you also need to be looking at the membership requirements. For example, if they're a member on a team, then they should already have gone through growth track. Obviously, if someone's in a small group, they may or may not have taken the growth track. So if you want them to serve in an area of ministry, they would need to take the growth track. If they're in kids or in youth, they would have to have a background check. They would have to fill out an application. And you have to have the ability to show up and to be dependable. All right. If you're a leader, some of the expectations that you're looking at is they need to be willing to engage our discipleship process. Right. Someone can serve as a greeter, and spiritually we may not even know where they're at, but they cannot lead anything. Obviously, that's different in kids. It's different in worship and any area of leadership. In an area of leadership, we need to know at least that they have salvation and they're willing to engage our discipleship process, meaning they're willing to plug into small groups. If someone is unwilling to plug into our small groups, plug into our discipleship process, huge red flag. You can't raise them up. Next is membership. To lead is something where we want them to begin to engage in the membership process, and then completed the lead track as a leader. Coach requirements. Obviously, when you take a step up, we're assuming the other things are there. Like as a coach, we're assuming that there's salvation there, they've gone through growth track, they've gone through lead track. So also coach requirements is to fill out the application, to go through the coach track, be available for 5 hours per week, and have the willingness to be able to equip and coach people. I would encourage you, if you're a coach, this tool is your best friend. When it looks at your potential performance worksheet, you should probably be looking at this at least every month, at least one time every month. So we've identified how to look for potential and performance to see who you want to raise up. But understand, one of the most important tools that you learn as a coach is the raise process. This is how someone is raised up to a different level. And so in a moment, we're going to do a video that focuses just on this raise process. And raise talks about recruiting, applications, and a variety of other things, interviews. And it also involves the learning loop, which is, again, the raise process, the learning loop, and this worksheet are three of the most important tools that you use as a coach, because the learning loop is how you can make sure that you teach something and it sticks and it stays and it works. The raise process is how you raise up leaders, and then this worksheet is how you identify potential and performance in order to raise them up. So those are three vitally important tools. But in this raise process, what we have identified is that there are certain steps or transitions when there's likely to be a breakdown. So as a coach, part of the things that we're charging you with to do is to help that not happen. What I mean by that is so what we've identified is that when someone goes through growth track, after growth track and getting on a team is where often people get dropped. Another thing we've identified is that when leaders go through a lead track and then actually get activated as a leader is a place where they get dropped. And likely with this being the pattern, the same is true at the end of coach track as well. So we're charging you with this heart to be aware of that, help identify that, and help us make sure that that doesn't happen. Because when they go through growth track, we want to get them plugged into a dream team. Or if they're not saved or not ready to join a dream team, that we get them plugged into a small group. If someone goes through lead track, we want to make sure that they're actually onboarded well and there's a proper orientation and that is done well. We need you to help us with that. And the same thing with this coaching track. So just want to give you, in a second, we're gonna have this video that talks about the race process more in detail. But I just want to make that aware of you that those transitions, we've seen drop-offs. So keep an eye out for it so we can prevent it from happening. See, when you're looking at potential, one of the hardest things to identify is whether or not this person is just really good at continuing what they're doing or more involvement in this same area or raising up to the next level. Because people make a lot of mistakes. What I mean by that is, one example I saw was that you took someone who was really good at selling cars. They were like the best car salesperson that this company did. So what they did is they made that person the manager of all the salespeople, and it was a bomb. Why? Because he wasn't good at managing and teaching other people. He was good at doing it. So this is one of the key indicators, or this is one of the key aspects of trying to figure out is this person just really good at this level, or does this person have potential for the next level? And it's not that one is better than the others. You need people. You need pillars. You need people at every level consistently, because if someone's wired that way, they're going to have more joy doing it anyways. But one of the ways that you identify this is by looking at the potential, but also looking at their performance, because if you've given them more responsibility and they're crumbling under it, it's probably a sign. If you find a lane where they're excelling, then that may give you an indication. The other thing is to look at the competencies of the next level. If this isn't something that you're seeing in them, or you're only seeing one or two, it may not be, but one or two things are going on. One is they may not be able to take on that role, or two is they need to be developed. So one of the ways that you would identify that is giving them smaller tasks or projects to see if they can illustrate some of those other competencies. So that's the way that you can identify whether or not they are more of a pillar, or they have more potential in that same level, or if you're going to raise them up. Also, they may also explain their level of enjoyment. If you give them more responsibility and if they don't like it, then maybe you might want to rethink something. Another point in raising people up is if someone's exceeding expectations and they're doing what they do well, and you don't raise them up, they will eventually leave because they'll get bored. Now, again, we're assuming that because you also have to look at character issues and chemistry. How do they play nice with others? There's other factors to be looking into that. But if you have someone that's constantly exceeding and doing well, you will lose them if you don't raise them up. Like for example, when I was in ministry, I was consistently carrying the team. I wasn't even on staff at the time. If I had not been on the team, then several projects would not have gotten done. And after a period of time, we're talking like 2 years, it was just like nothing's changing and no doors were opening. And I was like, I need to begin to think if there's something different for me, because this person who's not even doing their job keeps getting raised up, or this other person, they're in the same role and getting the recognition of the team when they weren't even barely involved in the team. So it's important that you identify. Also, if you identify someone actually in your team is a stronger leader than you, that's something that you need to be able to maybe even process with your director of how to potentially raise them up. Again, if the character and the competencies are there and the chemistry that they play nice with others and things of that nature, as long as you have the character, the chemistry, they play nice with people, they have the same values of the church, as long as they have the capacity, meaning that at this time in their life they can carry it out, they have the competency, meaning they have the skills to pull it off, and they have the commitment to both the right theology and right beliefs and right vision as a church. If those things are there, then you want to find ways to raise them up, because if not, you'll lose them. You won't keep them very long. And I've seen that repeatedly where a certain person wouldn't raise up people, and then they just kept losing them. They're like, see, I can't raise them up because I don't have the people. Well, you keep losing the right people. So that's important to be identifying that. Again, this goes back to doing the most important things versus the tasks that are right in front of you. When working out with my daughter and developing her, what I realized is that there were certain things she needed me to repeat and other things she didn't. So I would encourage you guys as coaches, you may need your leaders to go back through the lead track. You may need to go back through the lead track. You may need to go through the coach track a few times or do it once every year so that you are fresh with information and that you can help take pieces of it and equip your teams on it. You may need to, and your leaders may need to go through the growth track again so that it's fresh. Understand the tracks is kind of a master class. Nobody's going to get all the information one time through. So that's why you have to help break it up in pieces to equip it over a week, a month, a year with different pieces, and you may want to go revisit it again because this is something that even when we go through it again, we still learn more things. Like, oh yeah, we forgot about that. We need to start doing that. So I just want to encourage you as you are reproducing to remember some things need to be repeated.